this past summer and everything. I went to Kenya for half a month. I worked at a church camp, and then I got to turn around. As soon as I get back from the church camp, I go to the beach, and then I get to go skydiving. And that was quite the experience. I want to tell you kind of the Lord spoke into my life through that. And I was going to sign up to jump out of a plane, and on the sheets, you literally have to sign your life over to these people. And they're like, if you die or something happens, you cannot blame us. It's your fault. You're the one who's signing your life over to us. Machines do break, parachutes sometimes don't work. And the Lord just spoke to me when I was looking at that. And he was like, there's people more willing to sign their life over to this parachute than they are to me. And it's so humbling that God has allowed me to do things like that. And it's all because of God's glory. Because I bow the knee to God, I'll never bow the knee to anything else. And my lifestyle is going to be a motivation to know Him. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about and share with you on my heart is John chapter 4. I'm sure we have all heard about this woman at the well. But this is a story. Jesus comes up to the Samaritan woman. And Samaritans and Jews didn't conversate back then. They were kind of racist towards each other. And Jesus, being Jesus, walks up to the Samaritan woman. He's like, hey, can I have a drink of water? And the woman's like, what are you talking about? Why are you talking to me? Do you even know who I am? But Jesus, being Jesus, turns the conversation around. He's like, no, if you only knew who I was, you would ask me for a drink of water. And I give you the type of water that lasts forever called living water. If you only knew who I was, because I don't think Jesus' goal was to really get a drink of water. I think he just wanted to start a conversation, kind of like what Eugene was talking about. We go fishing. We talk to the people. We bring them in. And that's exactly what Jesus did. He asked questions. He brought them in. And when I was reading chapter 4, go back to chapter 4, knowing Psalm 34 came to mind. Taste and see. I sought the Lord, and He answered me, and He delivered me. So taste and see He's good. And that's what Jesus is saying. He's like, come, know me. I'm good. I promise you I'm good. The thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy, but I have come to give you life so you can have it abundantly. It's Jesus' words. And He's not just talking about eternity. He's talking about right now. We can live that abundant life, the fruits of the Spirit, love, peace, joy, patience, kindness, all of it. That's what we're called to live into. And I was like, Lord, I want to know this. I want to know you, or I just want to know you more. That's what I want. I just want to know you. And I found as I dug deep and I prayed and I got on my knees more and more and I asked God to put the fear of God in me. It all starts with identity. Knowing who we are and whose we are. Really understanding what Jesus has done for us. It's just something that cuts so deep. It's unbelievable. And I want to just give you kind of an image. See, God, He stepped off His throne because He loved us so much. He looked at us and He was like, He wasn't content. He was brokenhearted, so He stepped off His throne. He lived amongst His people as an innocent man and died for sinful men. Heaven literally went bankrupt to get you back. He laid it all on the line to get you back. He poured out His kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven so that He could get you back. I want you to try to fathom the riches of heaven. You can't. But it was all poured out to get you individually back into His family. It's so funny that sometimes in the church we get so stuck on yeah, Jesus, forgive your sins, pray this prayer, you're good. But there's so much more. Taste and see. There's so much more, I promise you. Because He poured it out. The cross isn't just a measure of the amount of sin we have in our lives. That's obvious. It's a revelation of the value God has placed on your life. I wonder why Jesus, with joy set before Him, endured the cross. I was reading that, I was like, with joy set before Him. We love saying that, because Jesus is awesome. With joy set before Him, He endured the cross, scorning its shame. And it kind of hit me. I was like, joy? He had joy? And then I go on to Ephesians 3:7. It's my favorite verse of all time. And Paul says, he's like, by God's grace and mighty power, I have the privilege of serving Him. And I love that. It's like my motto in life. But when I dug deeper, I realized Paul was being persecuted. He was in prison. He was getting whipped. He was getting completely messed up for his faith following Jesus. But yet he says, by God's grace and mighty power, I got the privilege to serve Him. Even though I'm in chains, it's a privilege. And I'm like, Lord, why? Why joy and why a privilege set before Him? Is because they knew who they were and whose they were. You don't have the right to live as an orphan when you're a child of God. We don't have the right to walk around aimlessly when we know whose we are and who we are. We're a child of God. In Ephesians chapter 1, He says when Jesus died on the cross, he set us up with him in heavenly places. And I think it's really funny a lot of the time we talk about Satan, get behind me, you're trying to invade my life. But don't tell him to get behind you because he's beneath you. God's power has raised us to new life and sit us at heavenly places with Jesus himself. So I've been studying Philippians. Chapter 1, verse 21, Paul says something. To live is for Christ and to die is the gain. So I don't really know which one's better. Oh, like we live our life so afraid of death. But he knew he was a child of God. See, he's no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. And that's exactly what Paul was going. So he says in Philippians chapter 1, verse 21, he says, to live is for Christ and to die is to gain. Because really, I don't know which one is better. If I stay here, I'm going to be living for him and produce much fruit. But if I die, I get to get my desire to be reunited with Christ. Because that's the ultimate goal, is to be with our Creator. And I read on in Philippians chapter 3:8, Paul goes around and he's like, everything is garbage compared to what? Knowing Christ. That's literally the translation in the NLT. It says garbage. Everything is garbo, out the window, compared to knowing Christ. I think Jesus wants us to get to know him.